General who, in October 2024, something unprecedented happened. North Korea sent over 12,000 soldiers to fight in Russia's war against Ukraine. This wasn't just military cooperation. This was a transaction. And what Kim Jong Un is getting in return could change everything we know about the North Korean threat. Let me be clear about something. North Korea has not fought in a foreign war since the Korean War ended in 1953. That's over 70 years. For 7 decades, North Korea's military has been entirely defensive, focused on one thing: protecting the Kim regime from invasion. The North Korean army trains constantly, conducts endless drills, and maintains one of the largest standing armies in the world. But they haven't actually fought in combat since their grandfather's generation, until now. In late September 2024, reports started emerging from intelligence agencies in South Korea and the United States. North Korean soldiers were being transported to Russia. Not a few dozen advisors or technical experts. Thousands of combat troops. By early October, satellite imagery confirmed it. Ships were crossing from North Korea's east coast to Russia's far east. Trains were moving through the Russian rail network heading west. The numbers kept growing. First it was 1,500 troops, then 3,000, then 10,000. By mid-October, Western intelligence agencies estimated that between 12,000 and 15,000 North Korean soldiers had arrived in Russia. Some reports suggested the real number could be even higher. These weren't regular infantry. The soldiers came from the Storm Corps, known in Korean as the Pokpung Unit. This is North Korea's most elite Special Forces Command. These are the troops trained for the most dangerous missions: infiltration behind enemy lines, sabotage operations, high-risk assaults. In North Korean propaganda, they're portrayed as superhuman warriors, capable of swimming miles through freezing water, scaling cliffs barehanded, and surviving for weeks in hostile territory with no supplies. The reality, as we would soon discover, was quite different. The deployment was commanded by Kim Yong-bok. A North Korean Gons led the Storm Corps. He was promoted to vice chief of the general staff, and Putin personally requested his involvement. 2 other North Korean generals accompanied him: Ri Chung-ho, head of the Reconnaissance General Bureau North, Korea's main intelligence agency, and Shin Geum-cheol, another senior commander. This wasn't a token gesture. This was a major military operation, planned at the highest levels of both governments. By late October, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin confirmed it publicly. North Korean troops were in Russia, and they were heading to the front lines. The North Korean troops didn't stay in Russia's Far East for long. Within weeks, they were on trains heading west toward the Ukrainian border, their destination Kursk Oblast. For those who don't follow the war closely, let me explain why Kursk matters. In August 2024, Ukraine launched a surprise offensive into Russian territory, crossing the border and capturing several towns in Kursk Oblast. It was a bold move, and it worked. For the first time in the war, Ukrainian forces were occupying Russian land. Putin was humiliated. He needed to retake Kursk fast, and he needed manpower to do it. That's where the North Koreans came in. By mid-November 2024, North Korean troops were arriving in Kursk. They were integrated into Russian units, given Russian uniforms, and issued Russian weapons. The goal was simple: push the Ukrainians back across the border. But there was a problem. These North Korean soldiers had never seen modern combat. They'd trained for decades in North Korea's mountainous terrain, practicing ambushes and infiltration tactics, but they'd never faced drone warfare. They'd never experienced artillery barrages. Guided by real-time satellite imagery, they'd never fought an enemy that could see them from miles away. Using thermal cameras mounted on cheap commercial drones, the first battles were a disaster. Ukrainian drone operators began posting videos online. The footage showed North Korean soldiers moving in the open, in large groups with no cover. They were easy targets. Ukrainian artillery units, equipped with precision-guided munitions, could drop shells directly on their positions. Within days, the casualties started mounting. A Ukrainian military spokesperson said this: "They move like it's still World War II. They don't understand how exposed they are." Russian soldiers who fought alongside the North Koreans reported communication problems. The North Koreans spoke almost no Russian. They'd been given a list of about 100 basic military terms to memorize: forward, retreat, fire, stop. But in the chaos of battle, that wasn't enough. Orders were misunderstood. Coordination broke down. Russian units complained that the North Koreans were reckless, ignoring safety protocols and putting their own men at risk. One Russian prisoner of war, captured by Ukrainian forces, said they shot at us during training. One of them accidentally fired his weapon and hit our soldier in the leg. Another time, one of them hit an instructor in the stomach. They handle weapons like children. By mid-December 2024, the casualty figures were staggering. South Korea's National Intelligence Service estimated that over 3,000 North Korean soldiers were dead or wounded. That's 25% casualties in just 1 month of fighting. For comparison, the U.S. military considers 10% casualties in a single operation to be severe. And these weren't just injuries. These were deaths. Young men in their early 20s, sent to die in a foreign country for a war they didn't understand. On January 9, 2025, something remarkable happened. Ukrainian forces captured 2 North Korean soldiers alive. This was the first time anyone from outside North Korea had been able to interview North Korean troops deployed to Russia. The 2 soldiers were quickly transported to a secure location. Ukrainian officials, working with South Korean intelligence agents, began interrogating them. What they revealed was shocking. The first soldier was 21 years old. Let's call him Private Beck. He was born in 2003, the year his country tested its first nuclear weapon. He grew up in the era of Kim Jong Un, in a North Korea that was more isolated, more militarized, and more desperate than ever before. Beck told his interrogators that he'd been a student before joining the military. He loved soccer. He studied English in school. He dreamed of traveling to other countries someday, though he knew that was impossible for someone like him. When he was conscripted into the Storm Corps, he thought it was an honor. Only the best recruits were selected for the Special Forces. His family was proud, but the training was brutal. Long marches through the mountains, hand-to-hand combat drills, political indoctrination sessions where they were taught that South Korea and the United States were planning to invade at any moment. In September 2024, his unit was told they were being deployed on a special overseas mission. They weren't told where. They weren't told why. They were simply ordered to pack their gear and board a train. Bike said this, "We thought it was a training exercise. Maybe in China. We didn't know we were going to Russia until we arrived." The train journey took several days. When they finally stopped, they were in Russia's Far East, near Vladivostok. Russian officers met them and began what they called adaptation training. This training lasted 1 week. 1 week to learn Russian military commands. 1 week to familiarize themselves with Russian weapons and equipment. 1 week to prepare for combat. Then they were put on another train heading west. That's when Beck started to realize something was wrong. The Russian soldiers around him looked grim. They talked about the front and the Ukrainians. It slowly dawned on him that this wasn't a training exercise. This was war. The second captured soldier, 26-year-old Private Rai, had a similar story. But Ri was older, more experienced. He'd been in the military for 6 years. He was a sniper, trained to operate behind enemy lines. Ri told his interrogators, "In the military, they teach you not to ask questions. You follow orders. That's it. When they told us we were going on a mission, we didn't ask where or why. We just went." But Ri also revealed something else. He said that before they left North Korea, they were given a special lecture by political officers. The officers told them that if they fought well in this mission, they could apply for membership in the Workers' Party of Korea. This was a huge incentive. Party membership in North Korea means better housing, better food rations, access to education for your children, and protection from arbitrary punishment. For a soldier from a poor family, party membership is a path to a better life. Ri said, "They promised us that if we performed our duties with honor, we could become party members. That's what we were fighting for." Both soldiers also described the orders they'd been given about capture. North Korean political officers told them repeatedly that being captured was the ultimate betrayal. If captured, they were supposed to kill themselves. They were each given a small handwritten note to carry with them, reminding them of this duty. One of the notes, recovered from a dead North Korean soldier, read, "I will not allow myself to be captured alive. If I am wounded and cannot continue, I will use my last grenade to preserve my honor." Ukrainian soldiers reported that several North Korean troops did exactly that. When surrounded, they detonated grenades rather than surrender. But Beck and Ri survived. Bach was badly wounded, his leg shattered by shrapnel. He couldn't move. couldn't reach his weapon, couldn't kill himself. Ukrainian medics found him and treated his wounds. Ri was captured after his position was overrun. In the chaos, he was knocked unconscious. When he woke up, he was already in Ukrainian custody. Both men, when asked if they wanted to return to North Korea, said no. They knew what would happen. Their families would be punished. They would be labeled traitors. If they somehow survived and returned, they'd spend the rest of their lives in a political prison camp. Beck said, "I want to go to South Korea. I want to see what the free world is like." So why did Kim Jong Un agree to send these young men to die in Russia? Let's start with the simplest answer: money. According to estimates from South Korea's National Intelligence Service, Russia is paying North Korea approximately $2 billion per year for these troops. That breaks down to about $2,000 per soldier per month. Now, that might not sound like much by Western standards, but in North Korea, it's a fortune. The average North Korean worker earns between $50 and $100 per month, if they're lucky. Most earn far less. Many work for food rations alone. For Kim Jong Un, this is a massive influx of hard currency. North Korea's entire GDP is estimated at around $30 billion. That means this deal with Russia represents nearly 7% of the country's total economic output. And unlike most of North Korea's economy, this is cash. Real money that can be used to buy things on the international market. But here's the thing. The soldiers themselves don't see that money. None of it. The payments go directly to the North Korean government. The soldiers' families might receive a small bonus, maybe $100 if their son serves with distinction. But the bulk of the money goes straight into the regime's coffers. Where does it go from there? That's harder to track. But experts believe much of it ends up in Office 39, the secretive organization that manages Kim Jong Un's personal slush fund. Office 39 is responsible for generating foreign currency through any means necessary. That includes legitimate businesses, but also smuggling, counterfeiting, drug trafficking, and arms sales. A former North Korean diplomat who defected in 2019, Ryu Hyun-woo, described Office 39 as Kim Jong Un's private bank. He said, Office 39 doesn't answer to the government. It doesn't follow any rules. It exists solely to make money for the supreme leader. The $2 billion from Russia isn't just going to feed the North Korean people or improve infrastructure. It's going to buy luxury goods for the elite. It's going to fund North Korea's weapons programs. It's going to ensure the loyalty of the military and security services by paying them in hard currency. But the money is just the beginning. Kim Jong Un isn't sending his soldiers to Russia just for cash. He's sending them because he wants something far more valuable: technology. Russia has technology that North Korea desperately needs. And after years of international sanctions, Russia is one of the few countries willing to share it. Let's talk about what Kim Jong Un really wants from this deal. It's not money. It's weapons technology. Advanced, cutting-edge military technology that North Korea can't develop on its own. For decades, North Korea has been trying to build a credible nuclear deterrent. They've tested nuclear bombs. They've tested long-range missiles. They've made progress. But they still face major technical challenges. Their missiles aren't always reliable. Their nuclear warheads are bulky and difficult to miniaturize. Their submarines are old and noisy, easy to detect. Russia can help with all of these problems. Start with missile technology. North Korea has been testing intercontinental ballistic missiles for years, but their accuracy is questionable. In 2023, they tested a new solid-fuel ICBM called the Hwasong-18. It flew successfully, but experts noted that its guidance system seemed crude. The missile could reach the United States, but whether it could actually hit a specific target was unclear. Russia, on the other hand, has some of the most advanced missile guidance systems in the world. Their Iskander missiles can strike targets with an accuracy of less than 10 meters. Their hypersonic missiles can maneuver mid-flight to evade defenses. If Russia shares this technology with North Korea, suddenly North Korea's missiles become far more dangerous, and there's evidence that this is already happening. In November 2024, just weeks after North Korean troops arrived in Russia, North Korea successfully launched a military reconnaissance satellite. This was their third attempt. The previous two failed. But this time it worked. Intelligence officials believe Russian engineers were directly involved. Satellite launches require extremely precise calculations. The rocket has to reach the right altitude, at the right speed, at the right angle. North Korea's space program has struggled with this for years. But with Russian help, they succeeded. Now, North Korea has a functioning spy satellite in orbit. That satellite can monitor South Korea, Japan, and U.S. military bases in the Pacific. It's a game changer for North Korea's military planning, but that's just the beginning. U.S. and South Korean intelligence agencies believe Russia is also helping North Korea with submarine technology. North Korea has submarines, but they're old diesel-electric models based on Soviet designs from the 1950s. They're loud, slow, and easy to track. They can't stay submerged for long, and they have limited range. Russia has nuclear submarines. These are far more advanced. They can stay underwater for months at a time. They're nearly silent, and they can carry nuclear-armed ballistic missiles, giving them the ability to strike targets from anywhere in the ocean. If North Korea could build or acquire nuclear submarines, it would fundamentally change the security balance in East Asia. Right now, North Korea's nuclear missiles are launched from land-based sites that can be monitored and theoretically destroyed in a first strike. But a submarine carrying nuclear missiles is much harder to find. It can hide in the vast Pacific Ocean, making a preemptive strike nearly impossible. There's also evidence that Russia is sharing technology related to nuclear warhead miniaturization. This is one of North Korea's biggest challenges. They can build nuclear bombs, but those bombs are large and heavy. Fitting them onto a missile that can fly long distances requires making them smaller and lighter, without reducing their explosive power. This is extremely difficult. Russia has decades of experience with this. And according to defectors and intelligence reports, Russian scientists have been sharing their knowledge with North Korean counterparts. A former North Korean diplomat who defected in 2019 said this: Kim Jong Un has always wanted one thing, the ability to threaten the United States directly. He wants nuclear weapons that can reach American cities. Russia is now giving him the tools to do that. This isn't speculation. It's based on observable changes in North Korea's weapons programs. In 2024, North Korea conducted more missile tests than ever before, and the missiles they tested showed clear improvements: better range, better accuracy, better reliability. And then there's the issue of battlefield experience. North Korea's military hasn't fought in a real war since 1953. They've conducted endless training exercises, but training is not the same as combat. The North Korean soldiers in Russia are learning what modern warfare actually looks like. They're learning about drone warfare, about electronic countermeasures, about coordinating with artillery and air support. Those who survive will bring that knowledge back to North Korea. They'll train the next generation of soldiers. They'll share what worked and what didn't. In military terms, this is invaluable experience. One U.S. defense official said, every day those North Korean troops are in Ukraine, they're learning how to fight a modern war. And that's something you can't buy, and you can't teach in a classroom. So yes, Russia is paying North Korea $2 billion a year, but the real payment is technology. Missile guidance systems, satellite launch capabilities, submarine designs, nuclear warhead miniaturization techniques, and combat experience. This is what Kim Jong Un is really buying with the lives of his soldiers. Now let's step back and look at the bigger picture. This isn't just about North Korea and Russia. This is about a fundamental shift in global power dynamics. In June 2024, Kim Jong Un traveled to Russia and met with Vladimir Putin. This was only Kim's second trip outside North Korea since the COVID pandemic. The fact that he went to Russia, not China, was significant. During that visit, Kim and Putin signed a treaty called the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. The key clause in this treaty is Article 4, which states, if one party is invaded and pushed into a state of war, the other party shall provide military assistance without delay. This is a mutual defense pact. If North Korea is attacked, Russia is obligated to come to its aid, and vice versa. This is almost identical to the treaty that existed between North Korea and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. For 70 years, from the end of World War II until the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, the world was divided into two camps: the United States and its allies on one side, the Soviet Union and its allies on the other. This was the Cold War, a global ideological struggle between capitalism and communism. It shaped everything: foreign policy, military strategy, economic systems, even culture. The Cold War ended in 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed. For a brief moment, it seemed like the United States and its allies had won. Democracy and free markets were spreading. The age of great power competition seemed to be over. But that era is now ending, and what's replacing it looks a lot like the Cold War. Russia, weakened by economic sanctions and international isolation, is turning to authoritarian partners: China, North Korea, and Iran. These four countries are forming what some analysts call the axis of autocracy. They're not a formal alliance, not yet, but they're cooperating more closely than ever before. China provides Russia with economic support, buying Russian oil and gas when Western countries won't. Iran supplies Russia with drones for use in Ukraine, and North Korea provides soldiers and ammunition. In return, Russia shares technology and diplomatic support. Russia and China both block United Nations sanctions against North Korea. They provide North Korea with diplomatic cover at international forums. And now Russia is sharing advanced weapons technology. China is watching all of this very carefully. For decades, China has been North Korea's primary patron. China provides North Korea with food, fuel, and industrial equipment. In return, North Korea acts as a buffer between China and the U.S. allied South Korea. But now Russia is competing for influence over North Korea, and China isn't happy about it. Chinese officials are concerned that Russia is encouraging North Korea to be more aggressive, more reckless. China prefers a stable, controllable North Korea. Russia, it seems, doesn't care about stability. Russia wants a North Korea that can cause problems for the United States and its allies. This three-way relationship between Russia, China, and North Korea is complicated. These countries don't trust each other. They have competing interests, but they share one thing in common: they all oppose U.S. influence in their regions. And that's what's driving them together. On the other side, the United States is strengthening its alliances in Asia. In 2023, the U.S., South Korea, and Japan held a historic summit at Camp David. For the first time in decades, these three countries agreed to coordinate their military and economic strategies. They're sharing intelligence, conducting joint military exercises, and building a unified defense network. This is the Cold War dynamic, reimagined for the 21st century. Once again, the world is dividing into competing blocs: democracies on one side, autocracies on the other. And the stakes are higher than they were before. During the first Cold War, only two countries, the United States and the Soviet Union, had large nuclear arsenals. Today, there are 9 nuclear-armed states. The weapons are more sophisticated, the delivery systems are faster, and the margin for error is smaller. A former U.S. ambassador to South Korea said this: "We thought the Cold War was over. We were wrong. It never really ended. It just went dormant. And now it's back." Let's return to the human side of this story. Because while diplomats negotiate and generals plan strategy, there are thousands of families in North Korea who have no idea what's happened to their sons. North Korea has not officially acknowledged the deployment. State media hasn't mentioned it. The government hasn't made any public statements. As far as the North Korean people are concerned, these soldiers are simply on a special mission. But information is leaking in. It always does. North Korea's border with China is not completely sealed. Smugglers cross back and forth. Some North Koreans have illegal Chinese cell phones that can pick up signals from Chinese towers near the border. And South Korea broadcasts radio and TV programs that can be received in the northern parts of North Korea. Through these channels, rumors are spreading. People are hearing that North Korean soldiers are fighting in Russia. And they're dying. Lots of them. Families are starting to panic. In some areas, parents are frantically trying to get their sons exempted from military service. They're bribing officials, calling in favors, doing whatever they can to keep their children out of the next deployment. But at the same time, there's another response. Some young North Koreans are actually volunteering to go to Russia. Why? Because they want to leave North Korea, even if it means going to war. One report from inside North Korea, relayed by a contact with South Korean intelligence, described young men saying, "I want to see the outside world. Even if it's Russia, even if it's a war zone, at least I'll get to leave." This is the reality of life in North Korea. It's so oppressive, so suffocating that some people would rather risk death in a foreign war than stay home. The families of the dead soldiers face an even harder situation. If their son dies, will they be told? Will they receive any compensation? Or will they just be left in the dark wondering what happened? According to defectors familiar with North Korea's military system, the families will eventually be notified. But not immediately. The North Korean government will wait until the deployment is officially acknowledged. Then they'll hold ceremonies, present medals, and praise the fallen soldiers as heroes. The families might receive a small cash payment, maybe a few $100s, maybe less. They'll be told that their son died honorably serving the supreme leader, and they'll be expected to express gratitude. But privately, many of these families will be devastated and angry. They'll know that their sons were sent to die in a pointless war for a country that wasn't their own, to benefit a regime that doesn't care about them. A defector who left North Korea in 2020 said this: "The regime thinks they can control information. They think they can hide the truth. But people aren't stupid. They know something is wrong. And every family that loses a son, that's one more family that hates the regime a little bit more. Over time, this could have consequences. North Korea's military is built on loyalty. Soldiers are supposed to be willing to die for the supreme leader without question. But what happens when soldiers start questioning whether their leaders actually care about them? What happens when families realize their sons are being used as bargaining chips in deals they don't understand? History suggests that authoritarian regimes can survive a lot. They can survive economic hardship. They can survive international isolation. But they struggle to survive when their own people stop believing in them. And that's the hidden cost of this deployment. Not just the 3,000 dead soldiers, but the thousands of families who now have a reason to doubt the regime. So where does this go from here? First, let's talk about the immediate future. The war in Ukraine is not ending anytime soon. Russia needs manpower. North Korea has it. This partnership is likely to continue, possibly even expand. Some analysts believe North Korea could send as many as 100,000 troops to Russia over the next few years. That would make North Korea one of Russia's largest military partners, providing more troops than any other country. For Russia, this solves a critical problem. They've already lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers. They've mobilized prisoners, foreign mercenaries, and even elderly men. North Korean troops, despite their lack of modern combat experience, are young, physically fit, and willing to follow orders without question. From Russia's perspective, that's valuable. For North Korea, this is a sustainable business model. They have a huge standing army, over 1 million soldiers who consume resources but produce nothing. Sending 10% or 20% of them to Russia generates billions of dollars in revenue and provides combat training. It's almost a win-win for the regime, except, of course, for the soldiers who die. Second, the technology transfer will continue. Every month that this partnership lasts, North Korea's weapons programs get better. Their missiles become more accurate. Their satellites become more capable. Their nuclear program advances. By 2030, North Korea could have a significantly more advanced military than they do today. They could have functioning spy satellites that provide real-time intelligence. They could have intercontinental ballistic missiles that can strike any city in the United States with high accuracy. They could have submarine-launched nuclear weapons that are nearly impossible to defend against. This will force the United States and its allies to respond. More missile defense systems, more military bases, more troops stationed in South Korea and Japan, more intelligence sharing, more joint exercises. In other words, an arms race, just like the Cold War. Third, the geopolitical realignment will continue. Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran are not natural allies. They have different goals, different systems, different cultures, but they share one thing: opposition to the U.S. Led international order. As long as that common enemy exists, these countries will continue cooperating. They'll share technology. They'll coordinate at the United Nations. They'll support each other diplomatically and economically. And on the other side, the United States, South Korea, Japan, and other democracies will strengthen their own partnerships. We're seeing this already. The U.S. is expanding its military presence in the Pacific. South Korea and Japan are setting aside their historical grievances to work together on defense. Australia, the Philippines, and other countries are joining in. The world is splitting into two camps again, and the dividing line is becoming clearer every day. But there's one more thing to consider: the human element. The 12,000 North Korean soldiers sent to Russia were not volunteers. They were ordered to go. They were lied to about what they would face. They were used as cannon fodder in a war that had nothing to do with them. Some of them died. Some were wounded, and 2 were captured. Those 2 soldiers sitting in a Ukrainian prison told interrogators that they wanted to go to South Korea. They wanted to see what freedom looks like. Their stories are a reminder that behind all the geopolitics, behind the strategy and the weapons deals and the alliances, there are real people. Young men with dreams and families and hopes for the future. Kim Jong Un sent them to Russia as pawns. But their testimony, their experiences, and their survival have made them witnesses. Witnesses to the brutality of the North Korean regime, witnesses to the cynicism of Vladimir Putin, and witnesses to the fact that authoritarian governments see their own people as expendable resources. Those two soldiers, if they make it to South Korea, will tell their stories. They'll appear on TV. They'll write books. They'll become symbols of what's wrong with the North Korean system. And back in North Korea, people will hear about them. Not through official channels, but through whispers, through smuggled videos, through illegal radios. And more people will start to wonder, why are we living like this? Why do we have to die for leaders who don't care about us? Change in North Korea won't happen quickly. It might not happen in our lifetimes. But every crack in the facade matters. Every defector matters. Every family that loses a son and starts to question the regime matters. Kim Jong Un sent 12,000 soldiers to Russia to buy weapons technology. But he may have also sent 12,000 reasons for the North Korean people to doubt him. And in the long run, that might be the most important consequence of all.